A doll's eyes. If you walked into a home and saw a 7-year-old girl kept in a filthy back room, mired in excrement, dressed in a diaper and crawling along the floor, you'd do something, wouldn't you? Most of us have a gut reaction to this kind of abuse. We won't allow it. Yet because few people understand what abuse is to a parrot, usually nothing is done. It's not because people don't care. It's because they don't know. A girl baby left alone with almost no attention from anyone is unthinkable. Yet it happened. The girl's name was Danielle. The place was Plant City. She was the rarest of human children, a feral child. This poor girl was left almost alone for nearly 7 years. When the authorities took her from her mother, the child's room was filthy. Danielle could not speak and would not even make eye contact. Her only toys were covered in filth. She moved like a crab instead of walking. Her eyes were dark and distant, as if no one lived inside, like a doll's eyes. Today, this girl has been adopted by loving people who have been able to teach her to make sounds, to point to what she wants, and to eat with a spoon. Unfortunately, the human brain becomes nearly hardwired after the age of 7. Just how far this feral child will progress is unknown. Although she's already exceeded the expectations of experts, it's doubtful that Danielle will ever talk. Her mother abandoned her. Why? The mother said that she tried to dress her, but the girl just took off her clothes. In every case, the mother exclaimed that her daughter refused to do what she was asked to do. Dressing her, teaching her to eat, socializing her just took too much effort. In time, the woman just gave up and left her in a room out of sight where she was not a bother. This happens to parrots all too often. People don't know their natures, and they just give up in despair. It is hard to fault those who buy companion birds. No one tells them that they are like monkeys with wings. Few people would buy a monkey. What most people know about birds is summed up in one sentence. They are pretty and they talk. When confronted by an intense attitude, wielding a beak and a voice like a 747 at takeoff, people get scared. They don't understand birds, who are literally dinosaurs. And in some ways, it's harder to understand parrots than it is to learn a foreign language. So, like the girl, the parrot goes into a prison where it lives out its life, alone and unwanted, or worse. There is another parallel. Did you know that we humans and parrots share something special in common? The first 7 years for a child and the first 5 for a large parrot are the formative years. This is the juvenile dependency period. This is where we become hardwired to our lives. During this time, we both learn much of what we need to know to grow into a healthy adult. Parrots are hatched in incubators, separated from nurturing from the beginning. They are cooped up away from parental care, fed and mostly ignored. They don't learn the skills required to live in the world or what it's like to be among others of their own kind. Most abandon their parrots after they reach adulthood. After being abandoned by the human, who they felt was their life mate, the seeds of insanity come into full bloom. The issues that appear at that time are tougher to deal with than a child entering puberty. They are tougher because we've never gone through these times ourselves, and we don't have anything in our past to draw from. There is no substitute for knowledge. With our busy lives consumed by work, family, and social pressure, Few of us take classes and learn about these special creatures. Danielle was rarely let out of the room and never outside. She moved like a crab. In effect, she had her wings clipped. Birds routinely have their wings clipped so that they won't fly away. A parrot's defense, contrary to common thought, is not their beak. It is flight. The ability to fly away is their defense against danger. We take away their only natural defense. We have reduced them to crawling when their ancestors owned the sky. Thus handicapped, the beak becomes their only protection. What is it a weapon against? Our ignorance. For the girl, there was no escaping her prison. Whatever fears she faced there, she faced alone. So it is for most parrots and cockatoos. Living in squalor is no way for a child to live. Parrots are sensitive to disease. Some would say that most cages are clean, but if you examine the bottom of the cage, you might change your mind. Often the bars are only cleaned on the upper side. Mold and bacteria are killers for birds, and most cages are dangerously dirty. The bottom of a cage should not smell. Sometimes corncob or shavings are used instead of newspaper or some paper like that on the bottom of a cage. In those mediums, mold grows day by day. This should never happen. What of the disgusting toys? Parrots are given toys as useless as the girl's putrid ones. Parrots need toys they can destroy. It is a need driven by 83 million years of evolution. In the wild, they spend some part of every day chewing on something. I have many people say, I buy him toys, but he just destroys them. I can't afford that. All I can say is that you can't afford not to give them the toys that they must have to stay sane. The little girl suffered toy deprivation too. Picture the little girl's toys when you see a dangling piece of plastic chain and a hardwood toy in a parrot's cage. It amounts to the same thing. Having no real toys, a child or a bird becomes functionally autistic and dissociated from reality. Recently, a group of international cognitive scientists listed birds among the animals that are self-aware, just like we are. Their suffering is as great as ours. Most parrots and cockatoos are flock animals. Just leaving them alone for a weekend can drive them to the brink of insanity. After all, they are never alone in the wild, and the wild courses through their veins. Leaving them alone like this is like telling a small child that her parents died in a car crash. The nature documentary, Parrot Confidential, describes the horrors that parrots face in our world. The little girl cannot talk. No one taught her how to communicate. What do most people do with birds? We focus on getting them to speak our language. But what about theirs? The speech of birds consists of body language, along with vocalization. Amazingly, recent research by the Cornell University Ornithology Lab has shown that parrots give their children names, that each bird uses their name in conversation and learns the names of the others in the flock. We have a duty to learn their language, so we can talk to them. Like chimpanzees that understand sign language but can't speak the spoken word, our birds need us to learn and communicate using their sign language, the language of the spoken gesture, along with vocalizations. Without that, we can't communicate with them, and we leave them as alone as Danielle, the feral child. The authorities took Danielle to safety. She will never be all she could have been, but she's loved and cared for. Behind the bars of cages throughout the world stand intelligent eyes waiting for someone to understand. There are few families that would care for a feral child, and fewer still that would care for such a bird. Almost no laws exist to protect parrots. If that feral child had been a bird, she would probably still be in that room suffering. When you see a parrot shies away from you, or threatens you, or cries out shrieking, then try to remember this. Danielle did the same, and for the same reasons. Like the Phantom of the Opera, a caged and tortured spirit longs to be loved. Their sad lives have made them part genius, part romantic, and partly insane. Will you shy away from their mask of pain, or will you embrace them? The story of the feral girl can be found in the St. Petersburg Times of July 31st, 2008. There's also a new article concerning Danielle's progress that is available on that newspaper's website.
Science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public. Everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
The Chloe Sanctuary for Parrots and Cockatoos, a nonprofit charity dedicated to the empowerment of captive parrots and public awareness.